Today I have two guys with me who are both very, very smart, and they're both in the AI industry, both developing it and running companies using it. Thomas and Stefan. So, could you talk a little bit about what do you do first?
Yes, sure. So I have two companies. Firstly, I'm at a climate tech startup. I lead the engineering there. We build AI agents to make large corporations more sustainable on all sorts of fronts, to gather data, sort data, classify data, suggest actions, automate reporting, and tasks like this. Our goal is to 10x sustainability departments. And in our second company, that's a company Thomas and I founded together.
So this is a company you both
No,
are...
this is a company only I'm involved in.
Okay.
It's called Glacier, and I'm heading the engineering there.
Okay, and you also have a company which is shared.
Exactly. There's Textures.
Okay.
That's the company we founded together 2 years ago, where we build AI software products for large corporate clients and authorities.
Okay, and what about you? You obviously have the shared company.
Yes, we're both like very much in this large language model space. We've been working with large language models for pretty much 4 or 5 years now. So that's quite some time, considering that ChatGPT only came out like 2-3 years ago. And I'm using that mainly at my startup Digicast, where we automate customs clearance, like all the paperwork that comes with importing, exporting goods from like say China to Europe, the other way around between Europe, that's like something that AI can help a lot in, because a lot of unstructured data that we try to make sense of and use. And the second company came afterwards. That's like what Stefan and I am working on, is like AI consultancy. So like all the learnings that we had, all the expertise we've built in the last couple of years in working with AI and building AI agents on utilizing this new technology.
Can you specify what exactly is an AI agent?
What's an AI agent? So you want to give, like, an agent for me is anything that's like autonomous. Like you can use the technology as a tool. You can prompt ChatGPT to give you an answer. And it would gladly do so, right? And this is like, you use it as a tool. But what you can also do is give it more autonomy, have it decide to use you as a tool, to ask questions back, to use different tools in between to get to the final answer, to do this like iteratively and more autonomous, not necessitating the human to put the control flow and decide on its own control flow.
When you say that to use you as a tool, I can imagine many people thinking
human as a tool.
Yeah, exactly, of how AI is taking over, let's say, and becoming an overlord of humans. So what can you say about that? Do you think it is something that happens or could happen? Or
I mean, it's happening already, that we already give AI more and more autonomy. I think in the last couple of years it was more, you have like this tools that you use. You don't really like have an idea on what's going on in the background, like all these deep learning models on cancer detection and I don't know what. Yeah. But that was like very narrow in scope, and I think what's happening right now is more and more broad in scope, more and more complex problems that you can solve that necessitate different angles, right? Like all the nuance that humans have when they try to solve a problem. The premise of AI agents is also like to, given the problem, decide itself, like what's the control flow going to look like, right? I first do this, then I do this, then I do this.
So do you think we are chasing after AI to catch up with it, or are we actually leading it forward?
I'm not sure I understand the question. Who is we?
Do you think we are still in the phase where we try to understand how AI works, even from software developers like you, and try to catch up with understanding its potential? Or have we done that and we are actually leading it knowingly?
I mean, it depends on who you mean with we, right? There's plenty of people who barely know about it.
Okay. So you, as software engineers, for example, how do you work with AI? do you understand exactly how it works? Like I'm trying to get an idea of it.
Okay.
Is it programming like the rest of the programming, or is it completely different?
So, I mean, there's a lot of different trends and a lot of different things happening. I think a good question is the topic of understanding. To what extent do we understand it? And as with all other topics, not just AI, there is different levels of understanding something, right? As much as we have different levels of understanding how this podcast here works, how this microphone works. I actually have no clue how microphones work. I mean, I do have some clue of how microphones work, but if you come now with some technical diagrams and ask me like how information is being processed in there, I actually don't have a clue, right? And I think the same is very much true for AI. We have now these reasoning models, O1 from OpenAI, DeepSeek R1, and equivalent models that do show their reasoning before they generate the response. So if you can see it, there is a certain level of understanding, right? You can follow the reasoning, you can see what things the model thought about, reasoned about in its chain of thought, and came to the conclusion. So there is a certain level of understanding, and I think a really useful one.
I find this very interesting because from my studying in medicine, we know that in neuroscience, when you have a thought like that I want to move my hand upwards, we can actually see the electrical signal being transmitted as activity in the neurons before I actually make the conscious decision of lifting up my hand. So we see activity in the brain of processing what I'm going to do, lifting my hand, before I actually think consciously that now I'm lifting my hand. Do you think that something similar could happen with AI?
I mean, I think that's actually a really good analogy, right? Let's make a couple of comparisons there. Firstly, obviously there has to be first a signal before you lift your hand, because the signal causes your hand to be lifted. Now, how well do we understand the signal? From some other signals we looked at, from other people and from measurements on you, we know that roughly the signal corresponds to you will lift your hand.
Yes.
But how well do we actually understand the signal? Do we know?
Not completely, no.
Not completely. There is, depending on how deep, how fine-grained you want to go, we enter a point where we lose understanding. And with more and more complex model architectures that we are facing in this area of a mixture of expert models or let's not dive too deeply into technical architectures, but the more complex they get, the harder the intricacies of them become to understand. And I think that's for sure a trend that's happening. On the other hand, the high level understanding, I think, is improving.
Okay. You mentioned a couple of AI models right before, like DeepSeek, ChatGPT, all this stuff. Claude is also another one which is gaining popularity. Which model do you think is best for people to use, and depending on the role they need it for? I remember I was using ChatGPT, and then Thomas and I were speaking, and he suggested that I also try out Claude, and it had pretty good results. But what AI model would somebody like you use, and what AI model would, let's say, a random person need, either for copywriting purposes or research is also a very important one? I have to do a lot of research, for example.
I think first to understand is the AI model landscape is super dynamic. Every month there's new frontier models coming out of AI labs like Anthropic, which releases Claude, OpenAI, which releases ChatGPT. We have AI vendors like DeepSeek from China. There's a lot of different AI
China, as
China
Trump would say, yeah, the secret agents.
Yes. So they all compete for producing better models, and what is a better model is very dependent on what you optimize for.
Okay.
I think we want to differentiate two types of things. Firstly, AI models like GPT-4, O1, Claude and Sonnet, etc., and products built from those. And most of the time we talk about think of this as a spectrum, right? Nobody uses the raw model. In many cases we have very sophisticated products where the model is only a small part of it. And most of the things we use every day are somewhere on that scale. And what Thomas just described is the normal ChatGPT web interface where you have, or a lot of other AI agents where you give them a task and then they choose to use these tasks.
Okay.
And then there's products like actually Digicast, the product Thomas produces, where you have an extremely sophisticated platform with a lot of very clear and sharp workflows that are defined, where the AI models are only making very small steps and are very strongly guided with lots of guardrails. And the deep research agent of OpenAI is one of such products, right? There's an extremely clear, sharp process of what the agent does and like how he asks back about your intent, gathers information, which kind of data sources it looks through, how they are being looked through. And this is most of the time, like this is a fixed provided structure to some extent. I mean, we don't know the exact architecture, but there's for sure like a lot of guardrails and structure provided. And I think in that sense, the deep research agent of OpenAI is at the moment the best product to do research, the best product to generate research reports and find the right papers.
Okay. So in the first podcast I ever published, it was with Arijit, who is a guy, a very prominent leading figure in AI, both in terms of software engineering, but also he holds very important positions in healthcare. Very, very famous pharmaceutical company, has a very high position. When I asked him about what is AI, I remember him telling me that's a very complicated question because AI is usually a term that people use when they actually are not very sure what they're talking about. So they use this gray box to just put everything in the same basket, like AI. Do you agree with that?
Is an if statement intelligence?
Yeah. Okay.
I could argue so. I think there's like different levels of intelligence. I think like an array of if statements of like, if this is the case, then do this, is already some form of intelligence. It's like reacting on the environment somehow, right? I think we just like get to more and more sophisticated forms of intelligence. And
in what way sophisticated?
Like, if you see what we classified as AI years back, like we had like classical machine learning models trying to just put in a bunch of data, supervised learning, have this classified, and based on like this classified data, find patterns that would allow to like predict new, not yet seen instances, which is again a more sophisticated form of intelligence that like programmed if statements.
Okay, with AI having such a famous position in society right now, many people are glorifying it. What do you think is the biggest myth that people should stop believing about AI?
Phew, there's a lot. You start.
I'm thinking a lot about like societal impact of what those AI models will have. I think I heard a lot of, we also had like new technology within this industrial revolution, and they feared that this would take like all human jobs. In the end, it didn't. It produced even more jobs, and people worked longer. And I don't know what, like this thing that people get replaced by machines.
Yeah.
A lot of people think this holds true in this new paradigm of AI now as well. I think you should take this with a grain of salt because if AI can, like, if we have true intelligence and if we have like true embodiment of intelligence, like in robots, it's not very difficult, or it's something that is actively being researched now and putting a lot of money in on using those LLMs to also activate actuators, etc., on robots, and to teach robots how to do stuff, right, and to plan and do stuff. I think there's not a lot of niches left that humans are better or necessarily better than robots.
Necessarily permanently better.
Could that unlock more creative work? Meaning people who engage in creative activities will hold or even upscale their position, while people who do more mundane tasks could be more easily replaceable by AI?
I mean, a lot of people say at the moment it looks rather like the opposite.
Yeah. How come?
I'm not sure about this. there's a lot of things that
Like
may or may not
the
happen.
jobs that you usually attribute with like, okay, you need to have creative problem solving abilities, like doctors, for example, like architects, etc. That's like pure intelligence, pure information in, information out kind of tasks. We think that, or like I
We think we happen to think a lot of the
this
same
is
things.
something that is gonna be replaced rather soon. I think in terms of robotics, for example, we're not quite there yet. Everything there's like an intrinsic value of having humans, like for example at the restaurant you want to have like a human waiter. There's like intrinsic value that you pay for to have a human waiter and not
That's
like a
very
robot
interesting.
that delivers you the food. You can also go to like a fast food restaurant and stand at the counter and order there. But there's a value in like someone bringing it to your table, right?
Yeah.
And that's the kind of job that I think will survive longer.
That's very interesting because usually it's the opposite which is being heard.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, with that said, do you think AI has either consciousness or conscience? To define consciousness is awareness of existence, and conscience is a moral compass which guides you, and essentially, let's describe it as an inner voice which tells you what is right and what is wrong. Do you think AI has either of those?
Yes.
That was straightforward.
Depends on your definition. I think people keep changing their definition such that per definition, people keep changing their definitions of what consciousness and conscious, how did you call the other word?
Conscience.
Conscience, are not within the definition of what AI has and does. I think it's very clear what kind of consciousness or not consciousness AI has. There is not that much ambiguity around it. It's rather the ambiguity around the definition of the word. Is AI able to perform actions that we would a couple of years ago have thought that require consciousness, and do things based on some form of operational awareness that it exists and is a language model? Yes, absolutely, no doubt. If I ask it, hey, can you do X, Y, or can you tell me about the car crash last week? It will typically, if it does not have access to Google or so, say, hey, my language cutoff date is, I don't know, 1 year ago. I don't know something about such recent events.
Yep.
That's a certain level of awareness.
Yep.
Most people's definition of consciousness 1 year ago, like 10 years ago, would probably have included this. Now, if your new definition of consciousness is this thing that humans have, then clearly AI is not conscious and will never be, because you keep changing the definition to something AI cannot achieve within a reasonable time frame. I mean, never say never, but like the kind of AI we are talking about at the moment.
Okay. So AI has a certain degree of self-awareness.
Yes.
I think it's safe to say. So it is not that it just mimics the patterns humans use. It's that it creates its own patterns of thinking.
I think that's not mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
I mean, you train AI on how it should behave and what kind of capabilities it should evolve, and a lot of this is also like done implicitly by just giving it a lot of training data. And AI companies like OpenAI, if they train ChatGPT, they usually also give it like some kind of information in the system prompt of like, hey, this is what you are, right? And it takes this information actively into account. Stefan already told you about like the knowledge cutoff date. That's like being nuanced and knowing about your abilities and limitations is something that those models exhibit, and this is there, right?
I actually have a double question on this. Would it be possible to program an AI without limitations, meaning take its own path in its life? And if so, what do you think would happen?
The paperclip analogy. So like there's this analogy, it's quite famous, where like which illustrates very well like this alignment problem you have with AI. Imagine there's like a company that produces paperclips, and they employ this AI, and train this AI to maximize for paperclips. And the AI is super sophisticated, super intelligent, and super good at what it's doing. And it optimizes and produces more and more paperclips and more paperclips. At some point, there's like no more resources on Earth, so like it also needs to use like all the human structures, etc., and basically builds like Earth towards like a paperclip factory, right? There's like this problem of AI. If you optimize AI towards like one particular goal, and don't give it like more nuance, then it's good at what it's doing, then you would end up in a scenario like this.
What are yours with moral responsibility? Like in case an AI would do something which either jeopardizes like a life, if we are talking about the healthcare setting, or any kind of this type of action, do you think the responsibility belongs to the software engineer that programmed it or to the AI? Because if the answer is the AI, then we have actually in society applied thinking of AI as like an entity which exists among
The question is, how do you make sure that the AI is aligned with what you're doing? If you give it like certain rewards and punishment for the right or the wrong action, and for that, is like this is what you're doing with people. If you hold them accountable in court and give them like punishment, like prison sentences, etc., then you give them a certain reward model, right? And the same you try to do with AI models, just that you do this in the training, right? You tell it, hey, this is like, given this input, this is like the output that I would expect. And AI companies like OpenAI or Anthropic, they are trying really hard to align with human values there, to not provide, or for the model not to provide you instructions on how to build a weapon, right? Stuff like that. Okay. Or to be nuanced if it gives you legal advice that it tells you, hey, actually, I'm not a lawyer, but this is my opinion, right?
Yeah. So I actually know a guy who had trouble in his business, and his lawyer came up with a solution which was very mediocre, at least, let's say. And then he inserted his problem into ChatGPT, and then ChatGPT found a couple of flaws that his lawyer was not aware of, and he got saved by ChatGPT. And then I think he fired his lawyer. But there are a lot of stories like that being used around. But since we're talking about AI essentially, in a way, at least replacing professionals in different fields, there's a theory by a historian which is called Yuval Noah Harari. Sorry for the pronunciation
we're
in case
fans.
it's wrong. Yeah? Yeah, okay. And she basically says that AI is going to create a useless class of billions of people who are going to be replaced by AI. And then you also have the conversation of universal basic income, that because so many people will not be able to work because AI will have taken their place, there should be a standard source of income that they should receive.
I think I'm much more pessimistic on this.
How come?
Like right now you have like all this socialism, etc., because you need to have people that are healthy, that are happy. You're dependent on them. You need them to be part of like economy as consumers, but also as workers. And I see a world evolving where capital is like in the hands of very, very few people. And if those people are not dependent on human workers anymore to have like all the wealth in the world, why would they share the wealth?
Yeah, it's the like common transfer of wealth problem. Yeah.
And like something like universal basic income is something that has probably certain values to them. For example, there's less resistance from this kind of class of people. But I'm doubting how big this value is going to be, and if there's like enough alignment of billionaires' values on keeping the worker class that got replaced by AI, I'm happy. And
this also introduces a new concept, which is regulations around AI. I remember I was seeing an interview of Elon Musk saying that he doesn't trust at all most hands which develop AI software, and that there should be government regulations around it. And I found it weird also coming from a guy who is all about lifting up government regulations to allow for individual will, both in business and in general society. And he also expressed huge distrust to Sam Altman, especially since OpenAI was created initially as an open source that everybody can use, and then very quickly it got a very capitalistic nature to its name. What do you think about government regulations around AI, and what do you think about OpenAI changing character very quickly?
I think the big difficulty is that there's currently an arms race going on, right? US wants to be first, China wants to be first, India wants to be first, Europe wants to be first, and
Europe does not want to be first. Europe is the only country, the only place that does not want to be first.
Europe wants to regulate, and you see like regulation is bad for innovation. You have governments that understand, hey, the more we regulate, the less innovation, the less we win this arms race. So what I'm actually seeing is there's not really regulation on AI currently, and also not in foreseeable future, as long as this AI race is happening.
Okay.
And I think the framing of this AI race is a really, really bad thing.
In what way?
In like, there's a lot of people saying, oh, if we don't do it, a lot of people use this framing of, oh, if we are not doing it, China's going to do it. And I think we should be very, very clear that this aggression of, if we don't do it, X does it, comes exclusively from the West, specifically from the US and the UK.
Yeah.
If you go 2-3 years back in time, there is absolutely no such pressure of, oh, if we don't do it, then the United States are going to do it in China. Quite the opposite. A couple of years ago, the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, with all their problems and all things that we don't like about them, and how they don't align with our values, with my values, they did not start this AI race, and they are not the ones pushing this AI race. I think they are even the ones that would be open to, like, to some extent, approach this together, because they don't want the AI race either. I think this AI race dynamic is something to a good degree made up by people who want an AI race, rather than people who are actually afraid of losing, like, of an AI race happening.
I'm not sure how new this race is, because we also saw it with the Soviet Union and America when they wanted to go to the moon. You have seen it plenty of times.
The race itself is not new, but the degree to how extreme we approach it is, like, varies, right? And there was also an extreme race between the US and the Soviet Union. Specifically the AI race and all the things we are doing on, oh, let's not make anyone responsible for anything, let's not hold anyone back, let's just maximum push on moving forward as far as strong as possible. How radical this the words around this are, and the actions are much more radical and extreme in Western rhetoric than they are in China.
Having established that there is a race, not that we want to encourage it, but who do you think is winning the race?
That depends on how long it takes to win the race. If it's a short-term race, if the race is won within the next 5 years, which I think is plausible, then the US will win it. If it's a longer-term race that goes over HR timelines of 10, 15 years, China is going to win it.
Okay. Let's do a little bit of business talk. What exactly does... let's take your companies one by one. The company you share, what exactly does it do, and how exactly does it use AI to create AI, in a sense? I find that very interesting. Do you use AI in your workflow?
Excessively.
Like our
everything we do is...
Our company is about, like, facilitating AI use in other organizations, right? We support organizations in using this new technology. We have our expertise. I think a lot of organizations don't have this expertise, and they're approaching us to help them build this capacity. So it's a lot about capacity building, about organizational learning, about doing first AI projects, about bringing the right people on board, and Textures is helping in that, right? Textures, like one of our core products is the CAIO as a service, where we put one of our engineers and just put them into the context of the organization, and from within build like this capacity.
Okay.
Right? Hire the right people, build the right teams, discover use cases that are easily replaceable by AI or augmented by AI, and build like AI literacy by giving people the tools and the know-how on how to use basic ChatGPT, for example, or Microsoft Copilot or other tools to do things faster and more efficiently. I think a lot of what we're also doing is building custom tools based on LLMs. But there's like different approaches, right? Depending on the stage of awareness a company is in terms of AI.
Okay. And then despite this shared company where you find AI solutions, you also have your other company which does the legal stuff, and you have the company on sustainability. How did you come to create these businesses? What were some of your earlier experiences in business, even potential failures, in case you had any? Like for each of you.
The first product in that range we built actually together was in 2020 when we got into an early beta access, an internal program of OpenAI, to test and build with their GPT-3 model, the base model that was underlying of the first like ChatGPT model.
Okay.
And we built an email automation assistant, like the kind of thing that Microsoft Copilot does now well.
4 years later.
We built a primitive version of that.
Really?
And well, I mean, obviously it was a failure. We are not building email automation assistants anymore, but we've built a lot of stuff in the meantime and engaged in various businesses.
Did you have any projects that didn't go well, and perhaps did that discourage you or encourage you further?
I think Thomas has cooler failures.
Let's share.
I mean, we've been trying to build companies for quite some time now. I think we're in this space for probably 10 years now. So like very early age, we started building companies. I think the first one I tried to build with 16 was like a hard and software solution for educational institutes. That was my first company. 2 years later, we failed. 2 years later, there was the COVID pandemic, where a lot of companies or schools called us again, hey, we need your product now. And we're like, yeah, not anymore. So that was like just not the right timing. And then we tried a new company where we got picked up by one of our co-founders.
Let's stay a bit in that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's instead of talking to me, think of talking to the average business owner who has that experience, or how he potentially could avoid having this experience.
We can talk about like every one of those failures in isolation. I think that's very useful. I think starting again with my first entrepreneurial experience, and first entrepreneurial experience, I'm talking about 16-year-old Thomas, who just like got out of a hackathon with a product idea and thinking, hey, this is something that could actually work. So we invested a lot of time in like the technical developments of this. I was lucky enough to get in a lot of programs for young entrepreneurs, like high school entrepreneurs, that support you in learning how to do the finance, how to do the marketing, the sales.
Do you think this is a good idea for somebody who is looking to start in entrepreneurship to do?
Very much so. Yeah, like just start with like anything, right? Anything that you own, like fully. Where you're responsible for, like in a small company, you're responsible for everything, right? You do like the marketing yourself, the sales yourself, the product yourself, the recruiting yourself, etc. And it's good to get all these experiences. And in learning some basic methodology, I think a lot of early or first-time founders, they have very wrong approaches, very perfectionistic approaches, very much or I'm not talking to anyone about my idea because my idea is so much worth. And then I just build in stealth mode for 2 years, and then I go out and I actually see, hey, no one's interested in my product.
Yeah.
So like that's the typically first time founder problem.
Yeah.
And what you learn is like more methodological approaches. Like I don't know, I'm a huge fan of lean startup, like starting with a small MVP, trying to test your hypothesis. Like a business model is just a set of hypotheses that you need to test as cheaply and as quickly as possible before you move on, right? And some of your hypotheses might be, hey, is this product technically feasible? Is this actually like a pain point for customers? Are customers easy enough to reach? Like sales is like super, super expensive. And I hear that a lot from people who want to build like yet the next social media platform, or yet the next e-commerce platform, or yet the next app on the app store.
That's interesting actually, because how do you identify which market is saturated and you shouldn't enter?
You test.
Okay.
And
how do you do that
and you
exactly?
want to test as cheaply as possible. One method would be, for example, to just spin off like a landing page and run Facebook ads. And you see, hey, it costs me 30 euros on average ad spend to get like one person signing up on the landing page for with the email address. Then that's probably like that's good information for your business, right? And then if this is not good enough to make your business profitable at some point, then you would like to not move on, right? Or if it is enough to be profitable, then you might then as a next step prove like, okay, now we have checked the hypothesis about I can reach the customer and it's a pain point. And I can go into like validating the technical feasibility of the product.
Do you think there are exceptions to that? Like, for example, Coca-Cola, I think, sold like 3 bottles in its first year. And then if they had used that as their only testing method, they probably would have said that there's no point continuing with this business.
I mean, of course, there's also like moonshot projects that you might have. But in those kind of moonshot projects, and Digicast was one of them, I can talk about this later, you need some kind of more knowledge than the average person, right? Yeah. If the average investor or entrepreneur gets the same idea as you do, then probably they have already tried it, and either they're already on the market or they failed, and there's a reason that they failed.
Okay.
I think the exception is if you're like in a niche market, if you have some kind of knowledge advantage to other people, then there might be chance to try and work on a moonshot.
Okay. Let's go back for a bit to the betrayal and the original question. What happened, first of all?
What happened? Just like a brief summary. After this like first entrepreneurial venture failed, me and
how old were you then?
18.
Okay.
Me and 2 people I knew from a personal network, we founded the next company. Very early stage, the idea was to build like a marketplace for educational offers, and that worked out quite good. Like very early on, we got like really big partners, like the biggest educational institutes in Austria. And from a technical perspective, we built a nice product, etc. And I think what we never did was putting everything down in like a proper contract with our co-founders.
Okay. Is that, would you say, almost always a bad idea? If not always, to
it's
not have...
It's always a bad idea to have no...
It's always good to have things on contract,
yes,
specifying exactly...
Like, for us, it was a lot of on trust basis. And at some point, if you can't, or like, if one of your co-founders is misusing this trust, then it's very difficult to take any kind of legal action. If you never had like any written agreement and a lot of uncertainty, right? Maybe we could have won the legal battle afterwards if we would go into this legal battle, which we never did.
Yeah, spending a lot of money in the process as well.
Spending a lot of money, and you have this uncertainty on like, this is my rights and this is not my rights, because then you rely solely on best practices from the courts, right? Like and not about anything that you explicitly agreed on how things work.
Okay.
And this kind of broke in the end then our team. And
Did that discourage you?
yeah, but like it also freed up time again for the next one.
What is your advice to the average new entrepreneur who gets discouraged from his first failures and just is it a conversation of having the stomach to go further?
I always saw any failed experiment as an experiment that I learned from, right? Like any failed experiment is still like some learning, right? And I also see, hey, my first two ventures did not work out, but my last two worked out properly. And I think a lot of that has to do with now having enough knowledge gained from all of these experiences, now having a more methodological approach on how to do things, knowing things like, hey, I need to have proper founders agreements, having proper also due diligence on co-founders.
Yeah, I think personally no matter what every person's dream is, I think there are two ways that can be destroyed. Either to never take action or to not continue when you see something being destroyed in front of your eyes. And I understand how difficult it can be, but also...
I'm actually a big fan of not continuing.
Yeah?
Some things just don't need to be continued.
Not necessarily in the same company, but do you mean it in the sense that it would be actually good to think that maybe I'm not for this?
Like everything comes with opportunity cost. And if you see like, hey, you invested already like 2 years into this company and it does not really seem to work out, but you already invested 2 years in this, why throw in another 2 years?
Yeah.
It's like, I think in German we have the saying of like, don't throw, don't ride on a dead horse or something like this. And this is not like, if you have already invested it, that's like dead capital, and you should look at how much is it worth in the future. And if there's like other opportunities that are worth more or worth exploring more, then you should just like leave it behind. If you see like, hey, this experiment failed, your hypothesis that your business model builds upon don't work out, then either you say, hey, I can take everything that I've built until now and pivot it in somewhat in a direction where I can make all these hypotheses about my business model work. You see this with a lot of startups because like if you spend 2 years building something, you have built something and maybe it's not the right market then, and then they pivot in like a different market. Maybe they just need like a different targeting strategy, different set of people in the team, etc. Then they can pivot a bit on the business model. But if this is not something that's feasible, then I'm a big fan of just like shutting it down and try something new.
Okay, but the key point here is to try something new.
Learn as fast as possible that something is not working.
There's a great saying by Alex Hormozy that fail as much as possible, and especially when you're young. You shouldn't aim to succeed as much as possible. You should aim to fail as much as possible. Obviously, not in the sense that you purposefully destroy a business to see the failure take place, but you should aim to get as many experiences as possible from failure. You shared a lot of your stories regarding that. Did you have similar failures in a way?
I mean, I think I've been part of most of these failures with Thomas, or of some of these at least. And of course,
in AI we call this transfer learning. Like I do an experience, I tell him about this, and he does not do the same experiences again.
That's a very smart way to live any aspect of your life, actually.
Yeah, I think it's more interesting to talk a bit about the meta implications, because I think there's some more nuance to it. A lot of people get stuck on a dead horse, as Thomas phrased it. And it's important to realize when this is the case and to try something new and rapidly iterate, right? But at the same time, I also think giving up things too quickly happens for some people on the other end of the spectrum, where, having commitment, even if you don't see the direct light at the end of the tunnel at every moment, can lead to great success. And
It's kind of compounding interest that you have with everything that you build.
Yes. There's also a second saying by Alex Hormozy, which is that you for a lot of time you grow not at all and then all at once. I don't know how much you agree with that.
Very much. Like I think a lot in business, in entrepreneurship, is positioning yourself the right way. And as soon as like you are correctly positioned, then things are working, right? If we would have sticked with the first startup that I told you about, we are like very much a product that would have worked properly in COVID times, where everyone was working and teaching and learning from home. But like we did not have the right timing and not the we also did not expect this to happen, right?
Okay.
I like this learning function a lot, actually. Like it occurs in a lot of places in life. This of you don't have any progress for a while and then you jump a lot. You have this for extreme like sports like athletes, where they practice for years and then they just have this one new
For 3
thing
seconds.
for 3 seconds, and then they jump on their skill level just by a large margin. And the same happens in AI models when you train them as well. They don't learn continuously and get better and better. I mean, they do that as well, but if you look at the training curves, they often don't get better for a long time until some new formation happens in the way their circuits are structured, or some new meta learning they got that suddenly improves them in a very short period of time.
Okay. All right. So how do you go about scaling a business?
Scaling.
Yeah.
I would not say that any of us is currently working on like a real scale up. I think we are still like both in a startup stage. I think you can prepare a lot for that.
How?
I can talk a little bit about from a technical perspective, right? And I can talk a little bit about recruiting. I'm not 100% sure what you want to hear. Can you specify your question?
Yes, of course. So you have a business. You have started having your first clients. Maybe you have also started having your first cash flow.
Mm-hmm.
And you find yourself, let's say, stuck in terms of further growth.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe for a business owner that would be in making like the first 50K per year or 100K per year, and then he just can't grow further. Would you say something to that?
I mean, that's very much dependent on like the business, I think. And I think that's something that usually happens very organically or reactive to like, hey, you have like this this one thing that mitigates your growth, right? And for Digicast, for example, last year that was sales. We never invested in salespeople. We are like a product that is working.
When you say sales, do you mean like cold calling, all the standard sales
We did not
procedures?
do any marketing. We did not do any sales outreach or anything. And I think that's something that, for example, with a new investment that we used for growth, then used, right? We hired really smart people that built our sales and marketing team. All of a sudden, you saw again a spike of like a 4x growth year by year, and very reactive. Like we saw this thing holding us back, and we reacted to it.
How much of success in business do you think comes from experimentation, and how much does it come from knowledge? I have some more friends who are entrepreneurs, some of them successful, and half of them will actually argue that reading books is one of the best things they have done. And the other half say that they need to read absolutely 0 books and they need to do everything based on experimentation. What do you think?
I mean, experimentation builds knowledge. So in that way, I think a lot of knowledge comes just from making experience.
Do you think some of this knowledge could have been gained in the easier way from seeing the example of somebody else?
I think a lot of things you just have to try and do yourself. Like there is a lot of things that if you don't experience them yourself, you cannot really understand them. I'm still a huge fan of reading books. I think reading books is a great thing. There is Like books are literally an extremely dense, highly packed concentration of knowledge that's just useful to have. It makes your mind bigger. It makes your ability to think better. It equips you with tools and gives you insights in things that, like, I think it's two different forms of knowledge, and both are not a replacement for each other. I mean, you can go through life without books, right? That's definitely the case. I think you just miss out on part of life. There is certain things of knowledge that you cannot acquire through.
What do you think? You've also written a book.
Yeah, I have written the book.
I think I learned a lot from books. I think especially in the early stages of where we had more ambiguity in what we're doing in the startup, in terms of, like, for example, recruiting people. I was like, I don't know, 20 years old when we had like our first big hiring offensive, and we hired, like, I don't know, 10 engineers all of a sudden. I was responsible for them to make sure that
How did you manage that?
that they're productive, etc. I mean, I was spending the little vacation that I had reading books on, how to set up proper working structures for them, how to make them productive, how to reward and motivate them. I think a lot of what I learned in these books, I tried to implement. I saw, hey, this is working in this particular case. Other things are not working. I think in the beginning, I think if you read a book, one problem is that you don't really see the nuance about the tools that it gives you.
Until it comes up
Until
on your life.
you actually try it and you see, hey, this yields results, or it doesn't yield results, and then you have to iterate and modify the approach a little bit. I think a lot of what I did in the beginning and what was just not applicable to our way of working at Digicast is implementing like Scrum product teams, like people that work in like this classical and popular agile way of, hey, beginning of like one sprint is always like a 2-week period. Beginning of the sprint, the team decides to, hey, this is our backlog. We think this one is like a big ticket. This is a small ticket. This is a even smaller ticket. You classify them. You say, hey, this is like the tickets that we commit to work on this sprint. Then we have like our sprints with daily stand-ups.
Goals.
And in the end of the sprint, we check back in and have like this classical sprint retrospective where we see, hey, was this like a successful? How do we feel? Are we happy with our progress? Are we not happy about the progress? What held us back? And I think it's a nice structure. And I think in a lot of product teams, especially if you work with more junior people, this is a very good approach on how to go about building products. I think at Digicast, where we are more self-organized or self-managed organization, where we try to give every one employee more responsibility. And
is that also more freedom?
More freedom, but also more responsibility. Everyone, like us as the management team, we try to just like give as much information about the context of the organization to every single employee. We are not afraid of like sharing all the financial details with them. We are not afraid of sharing what's going on with our clients, our like all the different aspects of the company, such that everyone can make their best informed decision on how they can support the company in the next week. And okay. Just like I have one weekly check-in where we see, hey, this is what we've been working last week. This is what we're working this week on. And everyone decides themselves like how to put in their efforts.
Okay.
And this is just like the way of working that works for us.
Okay. How important do you think meetings are for a business? Because from what I've seen a lot of unnecessary meetings that just waste time. How do you decide if a meeting is going to be productive and give a return, or just something that will give you the sense of being productive without actually having done shit in the day? So we're a pure remote company, which makes meetings even more important because like you don't have like this daily looking each other over the shoulder. Hey, what are you working on? Like this a little bit chit chat. I think it's important to have somehow a little bit of knowledge on what everyone is working on
for this, we take like on our first meetings like 2 hours straight, where everyone's like sharing what's going on, very broadly, even if it does not necessarily is not necessarily super important information for you, but just to have like a general idea on what's going on. Then we have like a lot of not scheduled meetings, but something that comes up organically as we need them. For example, hey, new task force working on like one particular product. Let's have a quick think on how we want to approach this, etc. And I think now with this Teams infrastructure, for example, it's very easy to do this quite efficiently and just invite people, putting like a calendar invite on the calendar when you need them. And I'm much more a fan of this way of working than on actually scheduled meetings.
Okay. Even though this podcast is based on life and wellness being unlocked, you will see many more conversations on AI simply because I've had yet way too many with the greatest people in the world doing AI, and I still have no idea how it works. I will see you in the next one.